Welcome back to the Oklahoma drill. It's just Alex and Ryan here tonight, reacting to yesterday's NBA draft. Alex, the Thunder took four players, three in the lottery, and then an early second. How do you feel just immediately first impression about the Thunder draft?
Um, I feel good about it. I don't think it's like one of those where I'm just like totally over the moon about it. I think I probably talked last time about the combination of players that would have put me over the top. But considering how the board kind of fell and everything and where we ended up picking, I think it was it was good.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing is last year, right? I came out of the draft and I was like, I don't really understand what we did, right? Taking Trey Mann, a player I didn't really see it in, and then Jeremiah Robinson Earl and Aaron Wiggins late. And I was like, I don't really know what we're doing here. This draft, it was extremely obvious what we were doing. And it's the thing that fits what a lot of people see as the Thunder's new plan for roster construction. And it's also the thing I want the Thunder to do with their roster. So I'm really happy about that. There are specific players within the four and the players who went before them or after them where you say, well, maybe there'd be other guys I'd like more. But just overall looking at the draft class, I look at this and I say, yeah, like Sam Presti is drafting a team that I want him to draft.
Yeah, I think, last year, one of the things I remember you talking about, the kind of team that you want is a very, it's like a bunch of 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" guys that are good at basically everything. They don't even have to be great at anything. And you're right. That's what this draft specifically was kind of geared towards. Obviously we'll talk about Chet, but just the picks at 11 and 12, like those fit that to a T. Guys that are potentially, maybe one of them is more theoretical than, like concrete right now. But yeah, that's definitely the kind of team we're shaping. And the thing that I thought that differed a little bit this year from last year's draft was just, and it literally is probably just like, these are the players with the skill set and this is how it fell. But I just thought it was interesting, the wingspan difference from this year and last year, because last year, I don't think we took any plus wingspan guys. I mean, we took guys that had, Giddey obviously had great positional size. Trey Mann has okay positional size, and JRE, decent. But this year it was like we took guys with really good positional size and they had like wild wingspans in certain cases.
Just to lay it out all on the table, the Thunder drafted 28 feet and 9 inches of length last night.
Right. Yeah. And I like the one that's wild is Jalen Williams, the one from Santa Clara, because he's 6'6" with a 7'2" wingspan, which is even it's pretty Shea-esque, even a little bit longer. Ousmane Dieng plus wingspan for sure, but he's already 6'10" anyway.
Yeah, he's like 6'10", 7-foot wingspan.
Yeah.
Jalen Williams, the other one, Arkansas Jalen Williams, to use Sam Presti's nomenclature. He's like 6'11", 7'1".
Yeah.
And then of course Chet is 7 foot, 7'6" wingspan. If he's 7 foot, he might be taller than that. We talked about that earlier.
I really think he's at least 7'1". Man,
yeah,
he's just so tall. Like seeing him stand next to other tall humans, and you're like, oh, he's 2 or 3 inches taller than that guy. And it's pretty crazy. But so before we go deep into the Thunder, let's just talk about how crazy the beginning of the draft was yesterday, because that was probably
we can't even start yesterday. We need to start the night before.
That's true. Yeah.
So it was like maybe 10 p.m. Pacific here. So that's the time it would be in Vegas. But we're talking the East Coast has gone to bed. It was like midnight Pacific.
Super late.
Yeah. So at this point, the entire country has gone to bed. It's 3 a.m. in New York. And the boards in the sports books in Vegas make such a dramatic shift. It goes from Jabari Smith like minus 130 as the favorite, with Paolo like plus 600 to go number one. And within 30 minutes, Paolo is minus 130. And Jabari on some books was like a plus wager for going one. So I saw somebody compare it to, this is the sort of movement you would expect if the guy in the lead on hole 18, if a guy was up 2 strokes on hole 18 and hit it out of bounds.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like that is the sort of thing that would generate that line movement. And it happened for seemingly no reason.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was kind of reinforced that it was for no reason when Woj in the morning came out and was like, hey, we're all excited, but it's still Jabari, Chet, Paolo in that order.
And immediately after, like, he tweets that, and immediately like the wager on Paolo goes to like plus 6,000.
Yeah, it like completely changes that. And then, then right before, it was probably 15 minutes before the draft, maybe 10 minutes.
I was driving home from work and before the draft started, and like I get a message from you that's like, it's happening. Yeah.
Well, because the way Woj, kind of worded it, I don't have the tweet in front of me, and I don't want to go back and.
Well, it said something. It was like the Magic, long expected to take Jabari Smith number one, are now understood to be strongly considering Paolo Banchero for the number one spot. And it's like, you don't tweet this unless the Magic are taking him.
Exactly. Like, Woj is, Woj got played just like everybody else in this situation. He's not sending that tweet out with that kind of wording if it wasn't Paolo. And then like a couple minutes before the draft, he tweets that he is the favorite to become the Mavericks or the Magic's pick. And it was just kind of wild. And the thing about it, in All-Time Smokescreen by Orlando, like, just insane. And honestly, it's kind of confusing as to why they did it. Like,
it's unbelievable for a few reasons. Like, to the point where when those odd shifts happen, my thought was the Rockets are trading up because, like, they got scared that Oklahoma City likes Paolo. They're going to trade up to 1 to make sure they get their guy, and they couldn't keep quiet about it. And somebody in Vegas got wind. Right. And then that just, like, the thought that the Magic would take him was, I've seen some people suggest, like, maybe the reason you keep your number one that quiet is, to entertain the possibility of trading down if you really think you're going to be able to get your guy. But that was just clearly not going to be the case, right, for the Magic.
Right. The only way the Magic, I think, we're going to have been able to work a trade down is if they had convinced Oklahoma City that they were going to take Chet.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. So
now here's the astonishing thing. And to my knowledge, this has not been refuted. The Magic didn't talk to Paolo during this process.
Yeah, I think the report was he didn't work out for them formally, and he didn't meet with them formally.
Right. There was no formal
dialogue,
right?
Maybe at the combine or something.
Right, but they never sat down and interviewed him. They never had him in a private workout. Did they have his medicals?
I would imagine. They had the number one pick, and Orlando's not a team that's like, they're not the Kings, where teams are just like, or agents are going to be like, you can't go there, or we don't want you there. Yeah. So I would imagine they had that information. But the thing about it to me is when Orlando won the lottery first and got that number one pick, I thought Paolo was the best option for them by far, because this is a team that they have a lot of young players on their team that I think a lot of them project to be nice players, but they all project to be kind of nice role players, Franz Wagner had a great rookie year. He's not a number one guy.
No.
Jalen Suggs, I think, I still think he can be a good player in the NBA. But guys like that you don't generally have the kind of season he had and then wind up being a superstar after that. I mean, he can still be a good player, but he's not a number one guy.
Yeah.
Paolo, we've said all along, has the best ability to become a number one scoring option on an offense.
Yeah.
And Orlando has some interesting pieces on that roster to where they can kind of insulate maybe some of the things that Paolo doesn't do defensively, because they have, Suggs projects as a really good defender. Markelle Fultz projects as a good defender. Franz Wagner's good. If Jonathan Isaac ever plays basketball again, he is a great defender. So there is a lot of that on that roster. So it always made sense to me that Paolo should be their guy. It was just the entire process. It was Jabari Smith and the occasional Chet Holmgren's kind of fits the kind of guys they've liked in the past thing.
Right. I also think Larry Suggs really wanted Magic to draft Chet.
Oh, yeah.
Like this past week, a bunch of articles about Chet and his background came up, and they're all Larry Suggs talking about how he was like, this guy's going to go number one in the NBA draft.
Yeah.
And I think at one point he said that Chet and Jalen would be the new Shaq and Penny.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure. Yeah.
I'm glad
that didn't happen, because that would just be such an annoying storyline.
Yeah. Especially if Jalen Suggs turned out to be not very good in the NBA.
Right. Yeah.
One guy, ultimately it worked out okay, I guess, for him. But when this happened, one guy I was really feeling for was Jabari Smith, who only worked out with the Magic and OKC.
Yeah.
So that's I feel like that's pretty rude of the Magic to leave him, to very clearly lead him on like that.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there's not, he is such a can't miss prospect in terms of what he can provide to a team as his floor, that he was not going to fall very far. Right. There's not a ton of bust potential for him. So he wasn't going to be a guy who could fall in that situation. But other guys in that situation, if you haven't worked out with a team, they're not going to be taking that swing on you.
Yeah.
And so that could have been a really rude night for Jabari Smith.
Yeah. Well, I think, Jabari Smith was introduced to what the NBA is like, on his first night as an NBA player, honestly. Yeah. It's truly teams, they don't really care about you, you are an asset to them. And that's the way of the business for the NBA and sports in general. So, but like you said, I think it's going to wind up okay. We'll talk about him maybe in Houston a little bit more, but
yeah.
So after Paolo goes one, everything, I'm just, holy shit. And then there was a tweet, pretty early.
I can't believe this happened.
Pretty early in the process. It was probably 3 or 4 minutes left on the clock for the Thunder, which the Thunder usually don't leak anything.
Right.
And Chris Haynes, who was a good reporter, he's done a lot of good things in his career. He tweets out that the Thunder are taking Jabari Smith. And that was, honestly, I was going to be excited either way. I was going to be cool. Sam liked.
There was going to be a part of me that would be pretty disappointed. It's not a rational part of me, but.
Right. But I thought it was really cool that since Orlando took Paolo, I was really interested to see who Sam Presti had number one on his board, because I was confident that it was either Chet or Jabari. And so I was really interested to see how that would go. And for a good 30 seconds, I had enough time to say, oh shit, and then post that tweet in our group chat. And then you responded, oh, he deleted it. And Will was just saying Chet's the front runner. So there was about a good 30, 45 seconds where we all thought Jabari Smith was headed to Oklahoma City.
I want to know what happened to Chris Haynes. Because that's one of those things where that can't happen on draft night, not with the number 2 pick. Everybody's watching. and you get a bad scoop and you have to delete it. Oh, that's bad.
Yeah,
That's bad
that's
news. Who did he piss off?
yes. I have no idea how that would happen. Maybe if I were guessing, I would guess like maybe he had multiple tweets ready to go and he just sent
Hit
the
the wrong
wrong
one.
one.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it, but it is what it is. And again, like I said, this all happened in the span of like 45 seconds. So it's not like it was a huge deal and we all thought it was going to be Jabari for a while. But yeah, the Thunder took Chet at 2. And, I think that's pretty much the guy that we had all kind of settled on was the best option
Yeah.
for what the Thunder are building. And so what are the Thunder getting with Chet and why is he the guy that we all wanted?
Well, I think he's pretty plainly, I think, the best defensive player in this draft. He's a defensive player of the year potential guy. Which we'll get to the Rockets later and their opinions on that, but he's a guy, defensive player of the year potential on the defensive end. And just an extremely efficient, which is a new word that means efficient on offense.
Right. Right.
He's an extremely efficient offensive player he takes shots from 3 and makes them at a good clip. And he takes shots at the rim and makes them at an obscenely good clip. Like incredible touch around the rim. He is lethal in transition because he can go either way. Like if you are one-on-one in transition with Chet, like there's nothing you can do. Because if you sag back, he's going to take the 3. And if you push up on him, a slender man is just going to go right past you and score. Like he's an incredible transition player. I think there was a point in the season last year where his effective field goal percentage in transition was like 107%.
It's really dumb.
Yes. But and there's more to his game as well. Like he's a fluid mover. One of those puff pieces, which I found interesting, but it's like, this is like partially some guy's coach trying to get him drafted number 1. So of course they say nice things about him. There was a lot of discussion with this biomechanics, like sports science outfit that he's trained with. And they're basically like they look for guys who are quote unquote kinematic movers. I forget what examples they give. One of them is like Trae Young is a kinematic mover apparently. But the thing and they're like Chet has every potential to be the largest kinematic mover we've ever seen. And they're like, and they study like positioning and movement to look for potential red flags for injury possibilities. And they're like, he has none. Like this is a guy who just moves elegantly with his body. And it shows in his play. Sam Vecini raves about his defensive IQ. He's maybe the best, like in terms of defensive anticipation, the best prospect he has ever seen. And there's a little bit more to his offensive game in terms that he didn't really get to use at all in Gonzaga, in terms of hitting things like Dirk fadeaways, which he has done in the past, but never really became a staple. Things like being a pick and roll ball handler, which is probably something he can do, but wasn't really asked to. Yeah, that's Chet.
Yeah, that is Chet. And I think the thing for me that sold me, obviously all of those things, it's like, yeah, it's cool that a 7-footer can do that. But to me specifically for what the Thunder are building, I don't think every team in this draft would or should take Chet over a guy like Jabari Smith because, the fit is interesting for a lot of different teams. But for the Thunder specifically and what they're trying to build with this team of guys that can just do everything, the hardest spot to fill if you're trying to do that was always going to be the center position.
That's correct.
There's just not a lot of guys that can do that. Chet is one of those guys that can do it. And the fact that we were fortunate enough in this draft to get up to number 2 to land Chet Holmgren, It's just I think Sam Presti was probably just over the moon to be able to get that. To be able to, I don't think there's any doubt that if we had the number one pick, I think Presti's taking Chet Holmgren.
I think there are like 3 people on the planet who project to be better at what we imagine, like what we imagine for the center position than Chet. And
one of them's a future teammate,
Well, it's like Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Victor Wembanyama. End of list. Like,
no, it's pretty cool to see the plan. I think it kind of is the plan that Presti is building it's able to come together a little bit easier now because we have that center position filled, and just having a guy with this skill set offensively, having a 5-man that projects to be a great 3-point shooter. Think about the openings that, like, we have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's led the league in drives the last 2 years with dog shit spacing on this offense. Imagine the things that, a guy like Chet can open up for him, with Giddey as well. I think Giddey's going to improve in his ability to attack defenses as he gets older, and that's just going to be really helpful. But then all of that going with the fact that you said, he has defensive player of the year type upside on defense, because it'd be one thing, you get this offensive, perfect fit, like what's going to happen on defense. The fact that he's going to like drastically improve our defense probably from day one even.
Right.
It's just huge because, his median outcome as an NBA player is probably Rudy Gobert with a 3-point shot. That's an awesome NBA player.
Yeah.
And there is a lot more that he could tap into it's really exciting. It's really exciting.
Yeah. As we move on, I think like the Thunder are going to have the thing with Chet and with a couple of the other guys we're drafting. I look at the team we're going to put together next year, and the Thunder are going to have to be pretty creative with lineups to be bad defensively. Which they can do. And these are all young players, so they're not going to be immediately incredible, but like the Thunder were really good defensively for most of last year, and they're adding the best possible player at their weakest defensive position.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. For sure it is. And, I think maybe we'll talk a little bit more when we get to our second round pick, but I think there is going to be a certain amount of protecting Chet, especially early in his career. He's not going to be a full-time 5-man. I would guess that he probably is the starter at the 4 next year. And that's something I'm okay with because, next year doesn't really matter, to be honest, as far as winning games. And, even in the future, we're going to close with Chet at the 5, and if you can play another guy that can do some stuff to relieve pressure of, taking those body blows, that's not named Walker Kessler, I'm really excited about that prospect. So.
Yeah. Which we'll talk about when we get to the second round. But
let's go to 11 because
did anything happen in between 2 and 11 that you want to talk about at all, or do you want to come back to that?
Well, let's come back to it. Let's go through the Thunder stuff. And, because there's a lot of things that happen.
Yeah. So 11 wasn't a draft pick the Thunder had,
right?
Until it was. This was another thing where in the moment it was very confusing, because the first thing you see is tweets saying the Knicks are taking Ousmane Dieng, and I was like, what are they doing? That makes no sense at all for them, and it's horrible news for Dieng, right? That would be like guaranteeing he busts, going to the Knicks where he will play behind Julius Randle.
He will not see a minute on the floor with Tom Thibodeau. Yeah, that was what I was thinking. And I say that like I knew what was going on because I was driving because I had an event last night that caused me to miss practically the entire draft after essentially Chet. So when I found out that the Thunder had traded for it, obviously I think we all assumed that they had traded up from 12.
Yeah, to 11. And it was like,
why?
Yeah, I was like, I mean, I get why Presti likes Jang. We've talked about Jang as maybe the thunderiest guy to have ever existed. We'll get into the specifics of that later, but it's like I don't think New York would have wanted to take him. So why would we need to leapfrog them and only them to get him when we're picking one spot later? And then I look at the tweet about the trade again, and I see that it says multiple future firsts, and it doesn't say 12.
Yeah.
And then I think you tweet and you're like, or you message and you're like, did we keep 12? And I'm like, yeah, I think we did.
Yep. Yeah.
And at that point I was like, oh, okay, awesome.
Right.
You know, and it's like, I don't even, at this point, I'm not even really concerned about what we paid for, which we'll get to. But I'm just like, for us to be able to just go into a draft and get a guy is like, this validates the project. This is why you hoard those picks, is you just traded into the lottery.
Yeah. So the picks they traded were all mostly lottery protected picks, at least initially. And, you know, two of them are the picks that they got last year for essentially trading Şengün to the Rockets. They traded those two picks, protected picks from the Pistons and the Wizards. And then they also traded a pick that they acquired in the Steven Adams trade that was a lottery protected pick from Denver for next season. So, you know, that's probably going to be in the late 20s because I think Denver's going to be awesome next year. So in all likelihood, none of the picks they traded are going to be as high as 11. You know, with that said, 3 first-round picks for 11 not a low price. You know, I don't think it was a situation where you go in and say, oh, Presti fleeced them, you know, but I think they paid the value they felt like was appropriate. And the fact that apparently the Cavs were super high on Ousmane Dieng as well. And they were also they were kind of bidding back and forth for Ousmane Dieng, and the Thunder in that kind of situation, they just can't be beaten. You know, that's just the reality of the situation.
This was absolutely the most 2K thing Sam Presti has ever done. Just being like, oh, there's a guy on the board, I want him. And so you just like take a billion draft picks and throw him at a team until they say yes.
Yep. That's exactly right. And you know, like you said, Ousmane Dieng is about as thundery a guy as has ever existed. He's a guy that you have been kind of higher on, like you've talked about him more, you know, like in our group chat and everything. And he wasn't a guy that I paid a lot of attention to just because I just wasn't that interested on the surface. But as you look, you know, obviously you go back and you watch stuff, and my quick thoughts on him are when I watched his highlights, you know, it's like a 5-minute video. Like his handle is really impressive to me because like he was stringing together some moves like that you just don't see 6'10" guys string together very often. You know, it was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. You know, like I didn't really know that was that he was capable of doing that at this point. He's young, and you know, he's playing in the NBL, which is a quality league. And the fact that he was, you know, beating guys off the dribble at 6'10" and stringing together moves, I was pretty impressed by that. So what else is there to know about Ousmane Dieng? What are we getting?
I mean, you've nailed the ball handling. He's so in addition to his skill, I think he's, you know, there's some concern that he needs to tighten the handle a little bit, but I don't know how much tighter a 6'10" guy's handle can get. You know, he gets low when he dribbles, impressively low, which makes him a good driver. He's not very strong yet. I should come out and say, like, Jang is a project. He's not ready to come in and set the NBA on fire. He started his season in the NBL playing really poorly for an awful team, like the New Zealand Breakers, I think was what he was on, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. One of the worst teams in the NBL. I think they shot 30% from three as a team.
It's really great. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like keep that in mind. So he's playing as a teenager in one of the most physical leagues in the world. He doesn't, I mean, he speaks English, but he's French. Right. So it's not his first language, living out of hotel rooms. And it showed in the first half of his season. But in the second half, he started getting things together. He shot the ball way better. Like ultimately his percentages are still not incredible, but like you can see that the shot is not off the table with him. And he started doing things like finishing through contact really well. He's a good passer. He's not like incredible. He's not Josh Giddey. And he's not LaMelo Ball. But I mean, almost nobody are those guys. But but he's like, he can make skip passes extremely well. He can use his height and his length to get the ball to the corner, which is a useful skill in the NBA. And defensively, he's not very strong. And he's not a twitchy athlete. He's very fluid, which is good, which is a good thing to be at his size. But the reality is he's not super fast or super bouncy. But he's pretty smart. And that shows in his defensive game. And this is kind of like, I just described like every player the Thunder pick from here on out. Defensively, he's a guy who's going to be limited a little by his athleticism, but he has so much size that like he's not going to be a liability on the defensive end unless he just doesn't develop at all strength wise. And I think he's going to be a smart player.
Yeah. Well, there's several things to like about him, and you mentioned a few of them, but one thing is just he's a true wing. He is truly a wing, and the Thunder don't have a ton of those guys, or they didn't prior to last night on their roster. And so having a guy that projects just truly as a wing defensively and offensively, just from a positional standpoint, I think it's worth taking swings on guys at those positions. If you're going to swing on a guy, I would prefer it to be a guy like Jang, to be honest. But I also think that, if you look at his frame and his size, like I think he's going to be able to fill out pretty well. Like he doesn't look, he's not a Poku Chet Holmgren even. Like he's not that kind of guy where it's like, and he is concerning with how skinny he is. Like, is he a healthy person? Like he's just like, he's a young guy that needs to put on some weight, and it'll happen.
Yeah. Like you just look at his shoulders compared to those two, and it's just completely different. Like you recognize like, right. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so I think as he gets bigger and he fills out, that could really help. Hopefully, I mean, in an ideal situation, like offensively, one of the things with him is that he doesn't really play through contact at all. Like he's a guy that kind of shoots a bunch of floaters, even at his size. Like, so maybe as he gets stronger, that part of his game can develop. And then defensively, if he gets bigger and he's putting on weight, he's going to be able to guard up and, guard any 3-4 that you would need, and probably some 5s, as he gets bigger. So that's really, really helpful and useful for the way this team is being built specifically.
Yeah. His floater, you mentioned his floater. It's a weird shot from him because it feels pretty low. And he uses it from pretty far out. Yeah. And you'd like to see him as he gets stronger, take those balls in and finish through contact. But he didn't shoot that shot at a horribly low percentage, which I think projects well, I think, at least for his touch.
Yeah, agreed. And the shot, that he has now, like from 3, I think it looks decent. and like the fact that he's able to shoot off the dribble already.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I think that he's going to be okay in that regard. This is not one of those like, oh, he's long, he's toolsy or whatever, that he's going to have to develop the shot. Like, we'll see if that happens. Like, no, I think there's a pretty good chance that does happen.
Yeah. And the shot off the dribble, and this is partially a degree, like a function of how good his handle is he's really fluid getting into it. So if he learns to shoot from a catch and shoot perspective, he'll be able to shoot off the dribble.
Yeah, no, he's interesting for sure in that regard. Just the off the dribble stuff. If you got a guy who's 6'10" that's shooting threes off the dribble at a good percentage at 11, you're feeling pretty good about giving up those 3 protected picks, And so we'll see. He's a project, he's probably he honestly will probably look really bad this year.
I think I saw somebody, it might have even been Sam Vecenie, in some draft reactions I've talked about him as looking being almost like a Bruno Caboclo light, in terms of he's going to look like he's a year away from being a year away.
Yeah. Well, Poku-esque even. I think he's probably a little. He's played much better competition than what Poku had.
Right. Yeah. Like there was some people were like suggesting Poku as a comparison for him, and it's like that's so rude to the NBL. Like
right.
They were putting up vaguely similar shooting percentages, but it's like he was doing it in the NBL and Poku did it in the Greek second division. Like
right. Yeah. No, it's. I don't think him and Poku are particularly similar, but I think that it's likely that the first couple of years of Jang's career on the court could look pretty bad at times. So, but just you got to hope that he improves and develops, and I think the fact that he's not ever if he develops into one, great, but really all he needs to be able to do is like shoot it, and then everything's going to be fine, because we have the guys that are going to make his life easy. And so just shoot it and you'll be all right, Usman. That's really my take on the situation. So we kept 12.
We did.
And the thing about this draft too is that and when we did our mock draft in the last pod, it was a situation where it became kind of obvious that the guys that we all liked it was unlikely that they were going to fall to 12, like it was like,
maybe it's a function of what teams were picking in the top 10. Mm-hmm. But I think, and we were talking earlier about this, it's also like a function of degree, which like, I think scouting is starting to become pretty optimized.
Yeah, it's getting much better. And, you get teams like Portland that just hired Mike Schmitz, and they, he is on video talking about how much he likes Shaedon Sharpe. So, we shouldn't be surprised that Portland took him. So the Thunder wound up getting Jalen Williams, the first Jalen Williams we'll talk about, from Santa Clara. And this is a guy that I think post college season, he was like, I think Vecenie had him in like the 50s, like post college season. And then I think people started to like, he had a great combine, and that kind of forced people to go back and look at what he actually did this year.
Because the thing about the combine is that, he went from, prior to the combine, you watch Jalen Williams film and you're like, oh, that guy's got pretty long arms.
Yeah.
And then at the combine, they measure just how long those arms are, and they're 7'2" from fingertip to fingertip.
Yeah, he's a 6'6" wing guard type guy with a 7'2" wingspan. And so people went back and checked out the film, and it's like, oh, he was the primary initiator on his college team and shot it great and spot up situations and can really pass it, can really handle it, potential on defense, and so like, he's a really interesting pick for the Thunder. And it's just like, now that we've made the pick and, it's easy to say this, but it's just like, of course, this is who we picked. Like absolutely. Why would we have thought that we would pick anyone else? Like him and Jane both. It's just like this is exactly what the Thunder are doing now. Like neither of these guys are great athletes, but damn, they can both dribble the ball, they can both pass the ball, they both have really good size for their position, and a bonus, they both have plus wingspans now. So like it makes all of the sense in the world. I think some people might have looked at it as a reach at 12. I don't think it was, because there've been reports that the Cavs really liked him at 14. The Cavs apparently they liked Jang, Agbaji, and Jalen Williams. That was their three guys, and we took Jang. And who knows if we're at 15, 16, they might take Jalen Williams in front of us. So
right,
we took the guy that we needed that we wanted at the position that we had. And I think it's similar to what the Spurs did last year with Josh Primo. And I think we're getting a really good player. Like I think he projects pretty easily as a guy that could fit right along next to Shea and Giddey and Chet and all those guys, just because he can do everything on the court.
Yeah. I should say, by the way, one last thing about Jang is that he is super young.
Yeah.
He will not turn 20 during next year's season.
That's true. Yeah, he is. He was one of the younger guys in the draft. So yeah, that's really exciting. Jalen Williams, I think he's gonna be like 22 this year. He's not particularly young. Like he is more of the high floor guy, which is fine. Like I think getting of both of those types, getting a project and then a high floor guy to go with Chet, I think was really good use of the two picks. I will say I think that there's, every year, it's been talked about quite a bit on Thunder podcasts, that it seems like every year there's a guy in like the 10 to 13 range that turns out to just be way better than we thought they would be. And I think Jalen Williams has the potential to be able to be that guy, because he did some pretty high level shot making stuff at Santa Clara.
Yeah.
I know it was West Coast Conference, but like the stuff he did was really impressive, and like he can create for himself and others at a really high level. And maybe that just, maybe the NBA things kind of open up even more for him, and he really takes off in that regard. So I've got my eye on him as a guy that's like sneaky, maybe has a higher ceiling than we think he does.
Yeah. And also just like another guy who is going to generally do the correct thing on offense and defense every possession.
Yeah, absolutely. And defensively, has it been like weird to you that like some people, like some draft people have talked about how he kind of sucks defensively, and then other people are like, oh, he's really good defensively. This is a great pick because he's going to defend next to Shea and Giddey. And it's just like, okay.
Yeah. I really think I think it's a question of like lateral quickness. And it's just like, if you either are just like completely out on his ability to stay in front of guys, or you're not completely out on that, and you're looking at a guy who's got a 7'2" wingspan, and you're like, oh, he'll be okay defensively.
Yeah. Well, and like I was watching a film study thing with him and Mike Schmitz today, and he a lot of the times apparently was tasked with guarding point guards in the in the NCAA. Like he was, and he talked about how first, another thing to know about Jalen Williams is that he was like 5'10", and then he grew like 8 inches now. And so it took him a while to like get used to being tall. Like he learned the game of basketball as a short guard, and then he became a tall guard and completely had to relearn how to kind of operate. And defensively, that was one of the things he mentioned, was just like, getting used to guarding guys at his size at 6'6" was difficult for him, because he was the smaller guy for so long. So I think the longer he's able to just, be in this body that he has, and the Thunder are going to put him in a position to be successful defensively. I think if Mark Daigneault's proven anything, it's that he's a good defensive coach.
Yeah. And it's funny to think about because, this is probably not something people put a lot of thought into, but that really is a very different situation to be in. To have to suddenly go from like, oh, my hips are going to be below everyone I guard to, oh, they're going to be above everyone I guard. That that completely changes what you have to do defensively. And so it's like, to me, it's like cool that he was able to put that into words, because I think that's like a good insight.
And this dude is like incredibly good to listen to talk. Like, he is very insightful in what he says. Like, it was one of the more impressive interviews that you hear from guys. Like, he was like, Mike Schmitz was asking him a lot of questions, and he had like thoughtful answers for everything. A lot of guys just like, yeah, it was open, so I took the shot, and it's like, cool, thanks, guy. But like, yeah, Jalen Williams you could tell that he kind of was thinking things at a higher level than most guys. So that was really nice to see. You could tell he's like the quintessential Sam Presti guy. Like, honestly, if I had watched this video, listening to him talk about the game, I would have been like, yeah, we're taking him at 12. That would have just been, it would have been so obvious that we're taking Jalen Williams at 12. But
yeah. And the funny thing was, I went back and watched the Sam Vecenie and Matt Penny, their podcast, live reacting to the draft. And I think they had Adam Spinella on for part of it, including the bit that where the Thunder draft Jalen Williams, and like Sam Vecenie steps away and Spinella and Penny are talking, and like they've realized that the Thunder still have 12, and they're like, oh yeah, they're probably going to take Jalen Williams, right?
Yeah. Once Spinella was like, I hope they do. Like, he's like, I think that's the guy that I hope they take for him. So, and I like it. I think it's a really great pick. Like, I mean, there wasn't any guy on the board left that I was like, oh, they've got to take this guy.
Yeah.
It wasn't like Shaedon Sharpe was there and they took Jalen Williams instead of him. Like, the only guy you could probably say that was there that, like maybe they should have taken, like, maybe if you're an AJ Griffin guy, I'm not. Maybe if you like centers, Jalen Duren was right there. But again,
and with both of those guys, you're having to talk yourself into aspects of them that don't fit into what the Thunder value.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And Jalen Williams, he checks all of the boxes that the Thunder are looking for. So on to the next Jalen Williams.
Right.
What a hilariously Thunder thing to do, to draft two players with the same name, and just the torture that they're inflicting on Michael Cage and Chris Fisher. Like,
oh my God, I didn't even think about that. Yeah. It was during the press conference afterwards. I think it was like, somebody's going to need to get a nickname pretty quickly.
Yeah. And I want Michael Cage to come up with the nickname because it'll be hilarious. So I'm just going to say, I like Michael Cage. I think he's great entertainment.
I think he provides genuine value to the broadcast.
I do too.
But that's because I don't need him to explain things to me. So
exactly. Like, I understand why people don't like him, and okay. But the dude, I think he's genuinely seems like a really nice guy, and he is genuinely entertaining to me. That is my take on Michael Cage.
Might still have the best haircut in NBA history from his time playing.
True. Yes. Oh, absolutely. But man, like, I'm very excited to see him and Chris Fisher with his, just hilarious the way he says Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's name, and
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander,
like, it's incredible. But what a team those two are. But the Arkansas Jalen Williams, he's a 4'5" guy from Arkansas, 6 foot. I think he's 6'10".
6'10". 7'1" ish wingspan.
7'1". Yeah. So center size, like, he's got plenty of size. from what I've gathered is that he's a very strong guy too. So he's going to be able to guard down low in the post. The thing that's the most interesting thing to me, well, I'm going to say two things. First of all, is the passing on offense. Like he genuinely seems like a good passer, and defensively, guy took a ton of charges.
Yeah.
And even though I absolutely despise the charge, if you've got a guy at his size that has a knack for taking charges, that's a really good sign of defensive IQ and anticipation.
He was unbelievably good at taking charges. He took 53 charges last season, more than one per game.
I wonder,
maybe close to or over 2 charges per game.
I wonder how many of those were like actually legitimate, or if it was like,
here's the
part
thing.
of it has to be the college refs call charges way, way, way too often.
I watched them all. Some of them were
charges?
pretty suspect.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like that, it's just impossible for them not like.
But the thing about
college refs are awful.
Yeah, it's a couple things with that. First, being like college refs are awful. 2, he is an astonishing flopper.
Yeah,
he will make people so angry. I'm sure SEC basketball fans hated this guy.
Well, I'm remembering so I think I watched 2 Arkansas games this year. One was against Oklahoma when we played them, and the other was against Gonzaga in the tournament.
What does everybody remember about the Arkansas Gonzaga game?
What is
Chet Holmgren fouled out and it was bullshit. We have the guy responsible for that.
Totally true. That's 100% true. And the thing that I remember the most about the OU game was that there was a stretch in that game where I think it was 5 possessions in a row ended in charges, like both ways. I was so mad watching that game. And I am sure I don't remember who was involved. I'm sure Jalen Williams was probably involved in that exchange of 5 possessions in a row where they ended with charges.
He drew a lot in their game against LSU, in one of their games against LSU, including a game clinching charge, which is the most college basketball sentence ever uttered.
Yeah.
The dude, and this is what makes me really excited about Jalen Williams playing with Chet Holmgren. First off, obviously tough as nails. He took 53 charges. But the dude knew how to get in position better than almost anyone I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That is a guy whose positional awareness is at the highest echelon. Combine that with Chet Holmgren, who is another guy like that.
Yep.
That's like the lineup for just some astonishing interior defense. And now he's not an incredible rim protector. Most of his rim protection was standing just outside the restricted area.
Yeah.
But if you can get there, generally what will happen in the NBA is the guy won't run into you, but he also can't get to the basket. So that works.
Yeah. Yeah. There are more than one way to protect the rim. You don't have to do it with blocking shots and altering shots. You can do it by preventing the shots from being taken, or redirecting the guy into other guy named Chet Holmgren.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really exciting. It's great to have a guy like that on your team. It's absolutely infuriating to play against a guy like that.
Yeah.
And we have the best comp ever for him, right? And it's the guy's, he's Nick Collison.
It's Nick
right?
Collison.
We've got a guy who is great at taking charges, and he's a really good passer. That's
he's going to be great out of the short roll.
Yeah.
And he's going to take a ass load of charges.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Thunder 2.0.
Think about this. How about Jalen Williams, Santa Clara, and Jalen Williams, Arkansas, running pick and rolls?
Oh, yeah. How are you going to communicate
with the bench unit? I remember Thunder fans the Nick Collison, James Harden pick and roll was their favorite thing that's ever existed.
Well, guess what?
And we've got the Jalen Williams pick and roll now. How about that?
Jalen's Williams pick and roll.
Williams pick and roll. I'm very excited. Very exciting stuff. But yeah, one other possible, and I'm sure this played a role in why the Thunder picked him. I think the Thunder probably are hoping, and I think they probably think there's a decent chance that Jalen Williams shoots it.
Mhm.
The numbers from three in college are bad. Like, I'm not going to say they weren't.
No, it was like 29%.
Yeah, 27, 29%, something like that. But shot up decently. I think he was in the 70s from the free throw line. And
Took them readily.
He took threes.
Yeah.
He took threes. And I don't think that a lot of, like, just kind of watching some of those attempts, a lot of them were not high quality 3-point attempts. I don't think he's not going to be allowed to take low quality 3-point attempts for the Thunder.
Right.
So there's some potential there, which even more, I think, leans to the Nick Collison comparison, because Nick Collison at the end of his career was hoisting up some corner threes. So I think that this is, I really like this pick, as far as, if you're going to take a center, don't take the big dude that can't move like Walker Kessler, and I like it better than taking a guy who's just like a lob threat. I think he brings more to the game than a true lob threat.
We should mention he's not like, and one of the things I like about him is that in interviews, he's very clear. He's like, playing above the rim isn't my game. I don't try to do that. That's not how I can make an impact on the basketball court.
Right. I think he's just a super smart player. And honestly, the dude, there's a lot of Nick Collison in him, but the pick reminds me of Jeremiah Robinson Earl as well.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's maybe got a little bit better physical traits. Like, maybe he's a guy that, whereas JRE is a 4-5 that leans more towards the 4, Jalen Williams is more of a 4-5 that leans more towards the 5, and hopefully they both learn to shoot. I think, Jeremiah Robinson Earl is ahead of him in that regard. So, but I think that the idea of them is both pretty similar.
Yeah. I had he's kind of like, this is going to be one of those comparisons where, like, people are not going to like that I said this out loud. He's kind of like, what if Jordan Bell was really thundery?
Oh, yeah. Bell's certainly a better athlete. Yeah, but I guess that's part of the Thunder thing now.
You're right.
He's
like, what if Jordan Bell was super new Thunder?
Yep. Maybe that's it. Hopefully he's not as Bell turned out to be kind of a head case.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any chance that Jalen Williams.
Jalen Williams seems super well put together. He's going to have his jersey tucked in every time he checks in on the court.
Like,
another fun thing about him, I looked at this as far as I can tell, this is true. He's the first player of Vietnamese descent to ever be drafted. That's cool. He's which Oklahoma City has a big Vietnamese population. Shout out to Oklahoma City's Vietnamese population. He will probably be the first Vietnamese descent player to play in the NBA, unless Utah really likes what they get out of their undrafted signing, Johnny Juzang.
What a great name.
It's a great name. Yeah.
Johnny Juzang. Yep. That's neat. Like, that's a cool little tidbit right there. But
he's from Fort Smith.
Yeah, like, kind of pretty local. Like, it's really cool. Like, the Thunder, they say it every year, and this is another way that I think that my take on the draft has changed in the last couple of years, is that, like, I do think that, like, cultural fit and the personalities of these guys really truly matters more. Like, I value it more than I ever have before.
Yeah.
Because I think that, like, if you look at the guys in the NBA that overachieve, like, inevitably it is these, like, super high character guys that are smart. You don't, like, it's so rare that you get a guy coming into the league and it's like, he's kind of an idiot, but he's so athletic that it's, there's still something. It's so rare that those guys turn into, like, something more than they're projected. And like getting a bunch of guys like both Jalen Williams, like these guys are just super impressive.
Yeah.
Like, and they're older. So I think having guys like that on the team next
Yeah.
to young guys like Chet and Usman is really helpful.
Yeah. Some other like high character stuff from this draft. Chet's from Minneapolis, and he was like a noticeable vocal part of the protests that occurred there after George Floyd was murdered. So it's like he's like a high character guy.
Yeah, well, Chet seems awesome. Like I've always liked him overall, and like Presti last night was like I think his quote was, "Chet was the person for us." You know, like
he loves that. God, he loves saying things like that.
Yeah, he does. You know, and like
we draft people.
Yep. But
I'm in on it. And
I'm in.
I like. There's a degree to which it's like at the end of the day, like we talk a lot about the Thunder U thing, and now it's like we're in Thunder U 2.0 or whatever. But it's like it's important for these guys who are like growing up together to like be decent to people to be around, and to like each other.
Well, and I think it also kind of speaks to kind of what they've learned as an organization.
Yeah.
And not to, KD, Russ, Harden, all of those guys, if you have a chance to draft those guys again, you would do it.
Right.
But I do think that, Russ is the exception, but like Harden and KD were both guys that, they turned out not to be the most like Thunder culture type guys.
Right.
And I think that is something that they're actively, looking to find, and as one of the primary things with the players they draft.
And I think it's just a recognition of, as like Sam has said frequently through this process, like they got really lucky to be in a position to get those guys and for those guys to develop the way they did. And you can't just expect that to happen again.
Yeah, no, you're right. And, maybe if you get a bunch of guys like that, maybe they'll want to stay, honestly, that's at the end of the day, like if Chet develops into a superstar, maybe he fits in here really well, and he wants to stay. So,
right. You drafted a guy from Minneapolis, a guy from France, a guy from Gilbert, Arizona, and a guy from Fort Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can think of another basketball player from Chile, Minnesota, and he loves it here.
Yep. Yeah. He shed some tears over how much he's loved Oklahoma City. So, so that was the Thunder's draft. And, I think, next up is Summer League, and I can't wait for that. Like, that's going to be incredible. Like, what's the lineup? What are we going to see?
It becomes hard because the Thunder drafted 4 guys again.
Yeah.
The Thunder have drafted 11 guys in the past 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
That's more than a playoffs rotation of guys.
Right. And I mean, would we expect all of those guys to be at Summer League? Like, we would, right?
I'm trying to think if there's anybody from 2020.
Because Poku's going to be there.
Poku will be there.
I think Vit is going to be there. I think I've seen that.
The only guy who might not be there is Teo. And if it's because maybe there's not a place for Teo on this roster anymore.
Yeah. I mean, that's entirely possible.
But it's also possible that all 11 of those guys are on the Summer League, which is ridiculous to have 11 draft picks on your Summer League team.
What's your starting lineup?
I think you probably have to start Gideon Mann. Maybe you can start Jalen Williams over Trey Mann, but I think you probably have to start Gideon Mann. At that point, you're probably playing Jalen Williams at the 3. There's so many guys. God, I think you go Jalen Williams, Poku, Chet. I think that is your starting lineup. Is Giddy, Mann, Williams,
what I predict. I predict, because I'm not sure Giddy will. Is Giddy going to go to Vegas? I know he's going to be in Utah.
I don't know. I had just assumed the teams would be the same in both because they're happening pretty close together. But
okay,
But Giddy could be a guy who like misses one of them because he doesn't need to be there.
Because he doesn't, yeah. Hopefully, I mean, ideally Giddy shows up and it's like he's too good to be here, send him home, or just don't play him.
Right.
That would be what we would want to see, because that's the step you want to see for him. But for like game one, I think our game one starting lineup in the summer league, which, you know, what a great topic this is. I think Giddy and Mann are your backcourt. I think you go Poku at the 3.
Ooh.
I think JRE is your 4, and I think Chet at the 5. I think that's your lineup. I think Poku gets it because of the seniority factor. You know, he's going into his 3rd year. And then,
well, I was thinking Poku at the 4, but
right.
Fitting JRE is a guy that I was like, I forgot about in terms of making this.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. You
right.
know? And then you still on the bench, you've got the Jalen's, you've got
I think you have to put the Jalen's in at the same time, right?
Agreed, 100%.
They have to check into a game at the same time to start.
We have to see that pick and roll. I mean, we have to see the Jalen's Williams pick and roll. Like, that has to happen. So you've got those two, you know, Vit, Krejci, 6'8" ball handler. What am I missing here? Aaron
Jang.
Wiggins.
Aaron Wiggins.
Yeah, Ousmane Dieng, Aaron Wiggins. Holy shit. Like, this genuinely, minus Shea, is just the Thunder.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, we need to win. We need to win Summer League. Otherwise, what kind of prospects do we actually have on this team?
Right.
You know?
I mean, Teo Maledon last year in Summer League was just like so clearly an adult out there. So yeah. I would expect this team to clean up in Summer League.
They've got to.
I do like the Jalen's, Jang. Who else was in that lineup for you?
Aaron Wiggins.
And
Vit.
So that's 5 ball handlers. I mean, Arkansas Jalen Williams isn't a ball handler, but like a short roll playmaker.
Yeah. And the thing about it too is that, like, from like a point guard standpoint, like, or just really a size standpoint, like, the smallest guy we're putting out there is Trey Mann, and he's like 6'4", 6'5".
Yeah.
You know, like, that's awesome. You know, we're not, you know, in terms of like important players on the team, you know, we're not putting any like point guard size guys out there. You know, that's really cool.
Yeah. Talking about this though, so the Thunder have drafted like 11 players in 3 years, 8 players in 2 years. The roster crunch is becoming very real.
Yeah.
So do we want to talk about what we think that will look like moving forward?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a good way to go.
I mean, I think first off, you know, JaMychal Green, obviously not really on the roster.
Derek Favors,
like, those guys are gone. If like, they will be cut if they're not traded, because there's just not room for them to play basketball.
Yeah. What do we have to cut? Like 5 guys or something? 4 or 5? I can't remember. I don't know exactly where the roster stands today.
Well, yeah, because the other thing is there's also a bunch of garbage on our roster.
Yeah. Well, and the 2 guys from like a young player in quotation marks standpoint that I am like, just cut them, I don't ever care to watch them play basketball again, is Ty Jerome and Isaiah Roby. Like, those are the 2 I do not care about. I think those are probably the first 2 guys that get cut from the team.
Yeah. I definitely agree, especially with Ty. Roby, I mean, he just, with Jalen Williams, Arkansas on the team now, I just don't see what he does. Like, yeah, because he's so clearly established already behind JRE. Like,
right. So yeah, he's a guy that has only really played when we were trying to lose games. We were actively trying to lose. And that was when we would put him out there. So, like, I think that says something. You know, it's like, we like you as a person, but we don't actually think you're that good. You know, it's kind of how I feel about what the Thunder think about Isaiah Roby. So those 2, you know, not a problem. get
Yeah.
him out. I personally, if we cut Teo Maladon, I'm not really gonna care.
I'm not going to cry about it.
No.
There's just too much ball handling on this team to be upset about that loss.
Right.
Because all he provides is that he's a functional lead guard. Like he's just a guy who can take the ball up.
And he's probably like not even really that, you know,
right.
Like
he's like when he's playing well, he's a backup point guard. Right. And there's like 10 guys on this team who can handle the ball. So
yeah, like that to me is where I am at with him. And Vit Krejci is also a guy that, you know, maybe, but like his first couple of years have been so injury riddled. And I think the Thunder, I mean, I don't think the Thunder have to like him because they took him at like fucking 34 or something.
Right. This is a guy who didn't make the cut on Vecini's board. Like,
right. Yeah. Vecini's board goes to 100, you know, like, and he was not in that group, but the Thunder drafted him in the 30s.
Right.
And like
genuinely difficult to Google on draft night.
Yep. But I think the Thunder want to see what he can do if he is healthy. And like theoretically, he is a 6'8" guy that can handle the ball, pass, dribble, shoot, can do all of that.
And you know, he's had these injuries like before, like I think he came into the league with an ACL tear from his time in Europe. Like before that, he was a guy who was known as a bit of a slasher. So I could understand if the Thunder were interested in seeing if he could get that back.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, give him this year, and if he doesn't show it, then you know you don't lose much. So, but yeah, I think that's kind of what I would look for is that kind of group. I think Roby and Ty Jerome, they need to go away, like honestly. And then Favors, there's no need to have a guy like him on the team. Just play Chet and Jalen Williams. And then JaMychal Green, same thing. You know, you don't need JaMychal Green. So
we can keep Mike Muscala around. He can retire here. That's fine.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think the Thunder have kind of tied themselves to Mike Muscala. And, you know, for what
Sam Presti flying out to the shores of Lake Minnetonka.
Yep. And you know what's funny though is that like the version of Mike Muscala we've seen in Oklahoma City would have been really awesome with Russ.
Legitimately, like some of the best basketball Mike Muscala has ever played.
Yep.
Costas Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah. That's we probably would have drafted some guy that random, you know, or we probably would have taken like Teo Maladon.
Well, what probably would have happened is that pick would have had to go into the Poku trade.
Probably would have gone into that. So, anyways, cool. So real quick, let's talk about some other teams.
Yeah.
And what they did. The Rockets got Jabari Smith. I think that's like the best fit for them. And that annoys me. I don't like that personally.
I don't like it because it means that somebody on the Rockets is going to play defense.
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
So I will say this until the Rockets took Jabari Smith, Tari Eason, and Ty Washington. Did they take anybody else?
Did they take Ty? I don't. Yeah,
they took at 29 or whatever.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, I don't know. Did they take Wendell Moore or did that get traded?
Houston Rockets draft 2022. Let's see.
Because he's slotted at 26, and I know Houston had that pick.
Who did they take? Okay, I'm on their thing. No, they traded. So this was when the Timberwolves decided that they were just going to make every trade for the last 10 picks in the first round. They traded they got 2 seconds and traded from 26 to 29 and took Ty at 29.
Gotcha. Man, so this is really interesting because the Rockets and the Thunder, I don't think they could be going about their rebuild more differently.
No. You know? And so much like the thing with the Ty pick is funny to me because I think prior to that, I was like, this team has no plan offensively. Like they've like at that they've got like 5 guys who are gonna hold the ball and then do something unexpected with it.
Yeah. Well, like think about this lineup that they could run. Like for whatever reason, they're in on Kevin Porter Jr. For some reason. So they've got him and Jalen Green as the backcourt. Like they could throw out Tari Eason and Jabari Smith Jr. at the 3 and the 4, and then Alperen Sengun at the 5. Like that's so like just that's like the opposite of what the Thunder are going to be throwing out.
Right. That honestly. Is 4 guys who are going to be looking to score in isolation whenever the ball touches their hands. Yeah. And Alperen Sengun.
Yeah. And then like just from like an IQ standpoint, like, you know, I wouldn't say that any of them are just like, I mean, maybe Tari Eason is, you would call him a low IQ player.
He's just like, a guy. The thing about Tari Eason is I think on both sides of the floor, he's out of control a lot of the time.
Yeah. And I like Tari Eason, and like in a vacuum, I like all of those players other than Kevin Porter Jr. or whatever. But it's just such like a weird fit. And like, I'm really interested to see it, but man, you're banking on a lot of things happening and developing. It's interesting. Like the way the Thunder have built their team is that they're essentially banking on guys developing as shooters.
Right.
You know, and if the Thunder's guys develop as shooters, they're going to be awesome. The Rockets guys mostly can shoot, but if they don't develop their basketball IQ and their ability to function defensively, those 2 things are like really hard to do.
Yeah.
You know, like
I think like the Rockets a lot of the time are going to look like the Celtics when they were playing bad.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be wild. I'm excited to see it. And like, you know, and honestly, what will probably happen is that the Rockets will suck next year and they'll get Victor Wembanyama, and then it'll all be fine because the world hates the Thunder. But yeah, it's going to be wild to see how that goes.
And I just talking about the Rockets, I do want to bring up one thing I saw that just blew my mind that this was said, which is that the Rockets think that Tari Eason was the best defender in this draft. I don't think Tari Eason is the best defender as the Rockets drafted.
Yeah, I think from a defensive tools standpoint, that could be true, because I think he's, you know, things that I've heard, you know, Sam Vecini talk about is that he's strong enough to deal with 5s down low, and then he's athletic enough to deal with guys on the perimeter. So it's interesting. You know, I think maybe from an upside standpoint, you could convince yourself that that's the case. I wouldn't agree, but I could see how you could talk yourself into that.
Yeah.
The Kings, they did the Kings thing. Honestly, I knew the Kings were going to take Keegan Murray because there was a report that Vivek, that was his guy, that Vivek Ranadive wanted Keegan Murray. And as soon as you heard that, you should just feel like, yeah, that's what they're going to do.
Right.
Of
they're
course.
Gonna take him like they took Stauskas. Like,
yeah, they're going to take him. I think Keegan Murray's good. He's going to be okay. Like the Kings, they're just going nowhere, man. Like, because Keegan Murray is not like, they're going to be starting Sabonis, Keegan Murray, and Harrison Barnes. That's probably the slowest front court ever. Like, yeah. Jesus Christ. Like those guys can't move their feet. Like Barnes is the best out of the group, and he's still not a great lateral mover. So like they're going to suck defensively. You know, they've hitched their wagon to De'Aaron Fox, he's good, but it's not who I would want to hitch my wagon to, man. Like I feel bad that Kings fans are having to deal with that. You know, like they got this like great stroke of luck. They moved up from 7 to 4, and then they drafted a guy that was like probably in the 7 range. You know,
I don't think he would have been there at 7, but like
could have been though.
He absolutely could have been.
You know, like it's just, it sucks for the Kings, but like, you know, that's just the Kings. They're always going to be the Kings.
Yeah, they jumped from 7 to 4, and I'm sure like Vivek was like, "Oh my God, we jumped the Pacers."
Yeah, right. Yeah, of course. I absolutely love what the Pistons did and what they came out with. Like,
Yeah.
I love like Jaden Ivey to Detroit was like my favorite non-Chet fit, like my
Mhm.
favorite non-Chet to the Thunder fit. Like, because like Cade is awesome. I think Cade is gonna be incredible. But Cade is not Luka Doncic. He
No,
is not a guy that like you want eating up 100% of your possessions and creating everything for everybody all the time.
no.
Like having a guy next to Cade that is very, very different than Cade from an athleticism and speed standpoint is so perfect. Like I heard, I think it was Mike Schmitz talking about, now not to say that this is how it's going to go, but he almost like he kind of comped it to like a Russ Harden pairing, but like when Russ was good.
Mhm.
Because you get that like speed and that like aggressiveness to the rim, and then you get the guy that's gonna like dribble and shoot it and do all kinds of passing and all that stuff,
Right.
like as like with Cade. And it's just I think the fit's awesome. Like
Yeah.
I love it a
And like
lot.
Ivy is gonna like every night Ivy is gonna draw the elite athletic defender from whatever team they're playing, right? Like you're
Mhm.
gonna need to put your fastest guy on him. And what that means is that Cade Cunningham is no longer guarded by that guy. And so the fact that he has difficulty getting around people is not that big of a deal anymore.
Right. Yeah, it lets Cade, it's just gonna let Cade cook, and it's gonna make things easy on Ivy too. Like I
Yeah.
really think that
Yeah.
like the fact that Ivy is gonna be in advantage situations off the ball, like, and because Ivy can shoot it, like he's
Mhm.
not like this knockdown shooter, but like you have to respect his shot, I think, a little bit, and I think he'll only get better in that regard. So absolutely love the fit. I thought it was really cool. Apparently his mom played in Detroit in the WNBA, and
Mhm.
his dad played maybe in the NFL, or his granddad, like his granddad and dad both played
Right. His
professional sports in
granddad, his mom,
Detroit.
and his dad all played sports in Detroit. And
Incredible.
the Pistons presented him with like
Yeah.
replicas of all three of their jerseys.
Yeah.
And that's just like
That's
Troy
so
Weaver
Troy
knows what
Weaver.
he's doing.
Yeah.
Like,
God, man, it like makes so much sense that like
yeah.
him and Sam work together.
Mhm.
And I think they probably like truly have a little bit different philosophies on what they want their teams to do.
Yeah.
But the way they run the organization is just
Yeah.
it's the same.
Because I'm really starting to believe Troy Weaver is like a true believer in taking the hyper athlete. But
yeah, unless it's Cade.
unless it's Cade. Well, if you have the number one pick and it's Cade, then you take Cade.
Yep. And then they also got Jalen Duren.
Right.
Which I love it.
The weirdest trade that ended with New York sending Charlotte 4 seconds.
Yep.
So weird. So yeah, so they got Jalen Duren. They got potentially the two best athletes in this class.
Yeah, I think that's probably, I think, Tari Eason up
Right.
there. And it's, yeah, for sure. Like those two guys, and Duren's probably going to take some time. Duren's the youngest player in the draft.
Yeah.
But putting him in a situation where he can play off of Cade and Ivy is just perfect for him. And like, see, I get excited when other teams take centers in the lottery. Like this is not the Thunder taking a center, so I'm excited about it. But but yeah, I think it just makes a ton of sense, because right now, like Detroit, for their 5 positions in their rebuild, for the 5 positions on their next good Detroit team might be settled. Like if things develop the way they want them to, like Ivy, Cade, Saddiq Bey, and Jalen Duren, and that's pretty good. If you can find another wing to kind of put in between Cade and Saddiq Bey, you could have like this like really switchable 2 through 4. All of the guys are like 6'8" or something. Like I really like that. And yeah, no, I'm really excited about what Detroit's got going. Which is not a sentence I've said, I don't think, ever in my lifetime. So,
oh my God.
Because even when they were good, they were like the most unwatchable team in basketball.
Yeah. The filling up the stands for Chauncey Billups.
Chauncey Billups and Rip Hamilton, man. Like, I will tell you this right now. Well, I was in I think I was in the 5th grade and they just like destroyed the Lakers in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that just, probably 10 years old. I hadn't known heartbreak to that level by that point in my life. And that was truly terrible, truly a terrible time for me. But anyways, any other guys that you like fit wise in the draft where they wound up?
Jeremy Sohan is a Spur, which makes sense.
Yep.
Trying to think of some. Here's a weird one. The Heat took Jovic.
Yeah, I was surprised.
I think that is the ultimate. I swear to God, Pat Riley's patented workout system is gonna make this man athletic. Pick I think I have ever seen, because the alternative is that Jimmy just murders him on the court. He's gonna miss a switch and Jimmy's gonna go get a gun.
Yeah,
there's that's the only two ways that this can go.
Yeah,
the Warriors taking Patrick Baldwin Jr. was one of those where I was like, oh crap, that could work out for them.
That could. Yeah, I mean, if he reaches the potential, then it's just well, shit. The Warriors have another really good shooter with good size.
Yeah. But the thing about there's no getting around. Vicini called him the worst athlete in this draft class.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't a Pat Baldwin fan. And to me, it's going to take, he's got to refine himself.
Yeah.
Because it's not that he was bad at Milwaukee. He was not draftable by how bad he was.
Yeah. This is a guy who we talk about his athletic limitations. He was playing bad basketball on a bad basketball team, coached by his dad and not trying very hard.
It was a terrible league. If he was not a consensus top 5 guy, there's not a chance. He was a consensus top 5 guy going into this year in college.
Right.
There's not a chance in hell.
No one would know his name.
Yeah. Yeah. He was, I think he shot 26% from 3, he shot under 40% from the field. He was awful defensively, just didn't do anything well, but maybe it'll work. And honestly, it doesn't matter if it works or not, because it's the Warriors, but
right.
Yeah, that's interesting. There were a lot of guys that were picked after him, after the Warriors selection, that I would have been more concerned with them getting.
Mm-hmm.
So all in all, I think it's fine. Honestly, maybe a little homery of me, I really like that the Lakers traded in and got Max Christie. He's a guy I liked. I would have loved if the Thunder had wound up with him at 34 too. I'm a fan of his. So, but
yeah. What do you think? What's your take on the Knicks night?
Man, the Knicks are so fucking stupid, man. Dude, why? Yeah. They're doing this to clear cap room. They got rid of Kemba, $9 million off their cap or whatever.
I can't believe who they're clearing cap room for.
Why are you trying to get Jalen Brunson?
Just an idiot franchise. Just
if you were doing it to get Kyrie, I would understand it. I would think it's dumb, but it's understandable.
Yeah.
Because there's a ceiling there with Kyrie. Jalen Brunson before the playoffs was not a guy that you're thinking, oh, we've got a clear cap room to go get.
Yeah.
What if you had done that for Reggie Jackson last year?
You would have looked like an idiot.
Yeah. And I like Jalen Brunson, and I hope he winds up going back to the Mavericks. I suspect he's not going to do that. I suspect the Knicks know that he's probably coming, or else they wouldn't be doing this. But man, that's the Knicks they're always going to be the Knicks.
It's that you could say they leveraged Oklahoma City to get 3 first-round picks, and it's sure, but
yeah,
they could have taken somebody at 11. They're not a good basketball team. They should think about that.
Right. No, their best young piece is RJ Barrett.
Mm-hmm.
RJ Barrett's not very good. I say RJ Barrett's not very good.
There's
He is
time
not
for
very
him.
good. He's
Like-
not very good for being your best young
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
You know, like
He is
that's
not-
problematic.
He is not a star.
No.
And
Like,
he's
if
not
he-
projecting to become a star.
No. If he were like on the Thunder, then I think it'd be really interesting because he's like their third or fourth best piece
Right.
in their young core. Like that's really interesting. But if he's the kind of crown jewel of what you have, young player wise, not good. And then you pass up an opportunity to add talent to the team, you know, and maybe are they going to re-sign Mitchell Robinson now since they didn't take a center in this
I mean,
draft?
do they have cap room to do that and get Brunson? Maybe. I mean, I
don't
get
know.
they can go over the cap to sign him, but
Yeah, who the hell knows? And then okay, let's say you get Jalen Brunson, you're running out Jalen Brunson, Evan Fournier, or no, I guess Fournier's
no,
probably
Fournier's
gone.
gone. Fournier, where is Fournier?
Well, he's still there, but they have to trade him to
Right.
get the room for Brunson.
I swear I saw a deal.
I don't think he's traded yet.
Maybe it was
but-
only proposed.
Yeah. You're still running Julius Randle out there as your starter at the 4. Like, man, that's not great.
Oh yeah, it was reported that they were going to try and get Fournier back into his exception in Boston.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, that won't happen.
No.
No, that's dumb. That's not.
Imagine trading a player, creating an exception, and then trading back for that player to put into that exception.
Yeah. Like he was bad in Boston. Like Boston doesn't want him. I'd be shocked by that. Yeah. This team is painful. This team is absolutely painful to think about. Man. Obi Toppin is still there.
Yeah.
Man.
He can dunk a basketball.
Obi Toppin is 24 already. My God. He's only 3 years younger than Julius Randle. That's insane to me.
I didn't realize Julius Randle was already 27.
Yeah. 27.
He's a guy who really needs to be 24 for me to feel anything about.
Yeah. The Knicks, they suck. God. Yeah. But is there anyone else that you're interested in what they did on the draft? I think the Spurs, they just seemingly do this thing where every year they just take the guy that falls to them. Mm-hmm. It seems like, or they Sohan and Primo, but I think getting Malachi Branham is interesting for them.
Yeah.
I like him fine. I think he's better than the 20th best prospects. So, I thought that was a pretty good little pickup for them. And Blake Wesley has an upside, has pretty good upside too. So,
yeah.
The Spurs have 1 million guards on their team. And how are they going to play them all? But who cares?
Yeah. Well, I think with the Spurs, it's just a team where they're going to do the research and come to a decision, and they're just not going to be very stressed about it.
Right. Yep. Man. Cool. Anything else you want to talk about?
Nothing really comes to mind. Still a little surprised Portland didn't trade the 7th pick. But of course we've talked about the Mike Schmitz Shaden Sharp thing.
Yeah, to me that felt totally like a hedge for them. I think that they know that things might not work out with Dame,
which is smart.
And the fact
I wonder if Mike Schmitz told them that.
I wonder, yeah. And I wonder, I'm sure that Portland went all in to try to get OG Anunoby.
Right.
And Toronto just didn't want to do it. And which makes sense. If Portland could have gotten OG, then that's a pretty interesting team pretty quickly. But
yeah,
now it's
I did see this might have been Matt Moore who pointed out, that's a team with Dame Lillard, who is a star, Anthony Simons, who you probably need to get reps into, right? You need to get the ball in his hands to get value out of. OG Anunoby, who thinks he is a star, and Jeremy Grant, who also thinks he is a star.
Yeah, that's true. It could have been too many cooks type situation,
right.
but
but if it works,
yeah. But I'm glad it didn't happen. But I just I think within the next year, I think Dame will probably finally figure out, okay, this is truly not going anywhere.
Yeah,
and he's already in his 30s. Go try to win somewhere.
Yeah.
And
He got
Then
swept in a Western Conference Finals.
Yeah. And then Portland will have Anthony Simons, Shaden Sharp, and whatever they get for Dame to start their rebuild. And that's not a bad place to be.
No, it's not.
Because Simons is good. Simons is a good player. And Simons and Sharp, similar-ish situations coming into the league. You know, they drafted Simons out of prep school. Like,
right.
You know, so it's fairly similar, and you know it worked out for him then. So,
right.
You know,
and you know that's a team. We haven't talked about this at all, and I don't know where this stands now. But Phil Knight has been making a big push to get ownership. That's a team that's ownership is going to change one way or the other relatively soon. And so, you know, it's probably smart to, at least for a while, play two timelines. I also wonder about the Jeremy Grant fit, because this is a guy who went to Detroit specifically because he wanted to play for a team with a black GM, and now he's in Portland.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, no, it could work. You know, I mean, the thing about Jeremy Grant is that I think he is, you know, when he's in a role that he's taking the kind of shots that he wants, that team's not very good, you know? When he's in a role, like when he was on Denver, I think that was like the perfect role for him.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I really like Jeremy Grant as a player. We obviously really liked him when he was on the Thunder.
Yeah.
He's not a guy who should be even the number 2 option for your team.
No. You want him to be like 4th.
Right.
You know,
you want him to be taking wide open corner threes or attacking closeouts.
Yep. 100%.
There's no need for him to initiate offense. There's no need to run post ups or, you know, clear out a side of the court for him. None of that.
Yep. Agreed. Cool. Is that all we got?
I think that's all we got. Ending with Jeremy Grant trash talk. Everything on this podcast comes back to Jeremy Grant eventually. Thank you for listening to the Oklahoma Drill. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, on Podbean, on Spotify, wherever you're listening to this right now. You'll find us in the future. Leave us a review if you enjoy it. Follow us on Twitter at RWMaxi and at Perd_Hapley. And we will see you later.